Imagine this. A quiet Sunday afternoon in our modest family kitchen, the kind with faded linoleum and a fridge humming like an old friend. But today, it's a battlefield. My dad, his face etched with years of hard work, slams his fist on the table. "Return the $50,000 or face court," he growls, his voice cracking with betrayal. Mom nods beside him, tears glistening, repeating my sister's poison. "She stole it all. Your own sister took our medical savings, our retirement nest egg." The air thickens with accusation, their eyes once full of pride, now cold, convinced by her web of lies. I'm in my 40s, a pillar at church, steady as they come. But in that moment, my world shatters. Family trust, church whispers our good name. Everything hangs by a thread. My sister, the golden child with her crocodile tears and fabricated loan notes, has turned them against me. Humiliation burns hot, but I don't scream. I don't beg. I sit there, heart pounding, and say nothing. Just nod, pocket my phone, and start documenting. Every word, every glance, receipts for revenge. What follows is a tale of quiet fury and calculated justice. I'll take you through the shadows of social exile, the thrill of uncovering forged documents and hidden bank trails, the gut punch of Thanksgiving ambushes and twists that expose secrets darker than theft, like gambling debts and parental blind spots. Stay with me and you'll witness the courtroom climax, the security video that unmasks the truth, freezing the room in shock. Mom's hand flies to her mouth. Dad collapses into his chair. My sister pales like a ghost. And then, they kneel begging forgiveness. This isn't just a story, it's your front row seat to ultimate satisfaction where the betrayed rises unbreakable. But the real bombshells, they're just beginning. Keep watching. You won't believe what comes next. My name is Laura Mitchell, 42, a bookkeeper at a small accounting firm in our quiet Ohio town, where I've built a life of steady faith and respect at First Grace Church. Raised in a family that prized trust and community, I never imagined I'd be the one accused of breaking it. But on that Sunday afternoon, everything changed. The kitchen smelled of burnt coffee, and the faint lemon of dish soap, its linoleum floor scuffed from years of family dinners. Sunlight slanted through the blinds, catching dust motes as they danced over the oak table where I sat, hands folded tight to keep them from trembling. Across from me, Dad's broad shoulders hunched forward, his flannel shirt creased from church. His eyes, usually warm with pride when he looked at me, were hard as slate. Mom sat beside him, her arthritis-swollen fingers twisting a napkin into knots. The air felt heavy like the moment before a storm breaks, and I knew this wasn't just another family talk. This was an ambush, Laura. Dad said, his voice low but sharp, like he was reading a verdict. "You've got one chance to make this right. Return the $50,000 or we're taking you to court." The words landed like a slap, each one slicing through the trust we'd built over decades. My breath caught, but I kept my face still the way I'd learned to when clients at work questioned my numbers. Court. The word echoed unthinkable. Me, the daughter who'd balanced their checkbooks-driven mom to doctor's appointments, led the church fundraiser every fall, facing court over money I'd never touched. Mom's eyes glistened not with love, but with something closer to betrayal. "Your sister told us everything," she said, her voice quivering but firm. "How you took the money from our savings, the account for my prescriptions, our retirement." "Laura, how could you?" Her words stung worse than Dad's threat, each one a brick in the wall my sister Emily had built between us. Emily, with her tearful stories and knack for spinning truth into whatever served her. I could picture her now, her voice soft and urgent, convincing them I'd betrayed them. The daughter they'd bailed out of debt, the one who always needed one more chance, had turned their trust against me. I wanted to shout, to demand how they could believe her over me. My pulse thundered, urging me to lay out every time I'd covered their bills, every late-night call I'd answered when Mom's pain flared, or Dad needed help with his rehab exercises. But shouting wouldn't undo Emily's lies. It would only make me look guilty, like I was scrambling to cover tracks I'd never made. So I swallowed the fire in my throat and let silence do the talking. My hands, steady from years of ledger entries, reached for my phone in my purse. I tapped open a notes app, typing Dad's exact words, the date, the time, 3:17 p.m. Sunday, October 5th. Every detail mattered now. The stakes were higher than money. That $50,000 wasn't just savings. It was Mom's arthritis injections. Dad's blood pressure meds, the cushion they'd scraped together for a retirement already stretched thin. Losing it meant more than numbers. It meant their security, their dignity. And beyond the kitchen walls, the whispers at First Grace Church loomed. I could already imagine the sidelong glances at next Sunday's service, the hushed prayers for peace that would mask judgment. Our family name Mitchell carried weight in this town, decades of showing up, pitching, and being reliable. Emily's lies threatened to unravel it all, painting me as the thief who'd preyed on her own parents. Dad leaned back, crossing his arms, his jaw tight. "We trusted you, Laura. We let you handle the accounts because you're the responsible one. Or so we thought." The accusation cut deep, but I didn't flinch. Responsible. That's what I'd always been, balancing their budget when Dad's carpentry jobs slowed, driving Mom to the pharmacy when her hands hurt too much to grip the wheel. I'd never asked for thanks, never needed it. But now that trust was a weapon in Emily's hands, and they were wielding it against me. Mom dabbed her eyes with the crumpled napkin. "Emily showed us the loan note, Laura. Signed by you. She kept it safe for us." A loan note. The words hung like a noose. Something I'd never seen, never signed. Emily's invention, no doubt crafted to seal her story. My mind raced. Where was this note? What did it say? But I didn't ask. Questions now would sound like guilt, and I wasn't here to plead. I typed loan note. Emily claims into my phone, my fingers steady even as my heart wasn't. I looked at them, my parents, their faces carved with disappointment. Part of me wanted to reach across the table to remind them of the daughter who'd never let them down. But that daughter was on trial now, and love wouldn't win this fight. Evidence would. I'd spent years organizing numbers, finding truth in columns and receipts. This was no different, just a ledger of betrayal instead of dollars. I'd build my case piece by piece and let the facts speak louder than Emily's tears. "Laura, say something," Mom urged, her voice breaking. "If you're innocent, why won't you explain?" I met her eyes, saw the flicker of doubt beneath her pain. Explaining now would be shouting into a storm. Instead, I stood smoothing my skirt, my voice calm as a Sunday hymn. "I won't argue," I said. "I'll answer with proof." I left the kitchen that Sunday with Dad's ultimatum ringing in my ears, my phone heavy with the notes I'd typed, his exact words. Mom's tearful accusation, the weight of their distrust. I didn't sleep that night, replaying the scene in our modest Ohio home, the linoleum creaking under my pacing feet. By Monday morning, I knew the real battle wasn't at that table. It was in the story. My sister Emily had spun a story so convincing it turned my parents against me. I'm Laura Mitchell, the steady bookkeeper who's balanced ledgers and family obligations for years. But now I was fighting a lie that threatened to unravel everything I'd built. Emily's voice, soft and quivering, had always been her weapon. I could picture her in Mom's living room the day before, her hazel eyes brimming with tears, her hands clasped like she was praying. "She took your medical money," she'd told them, her voice breaking just enough to sound sincere. "The savings for Mom's injections, your retirement? It's gone because of Laura." I wasn't there to hear it, but I knew her performance. She'd always had a knack for drama, the kind that made people lean in, eager to comfort her. She'd framed me as the villain who'd preyed on our parents' vulnerability, stealing the funds meant for Mom's arthritis treatments, the nest egg Dad had scraped together from years of carpentry. Her urgency, the way she painted it as a desperate betrayal, hooked them. They didn't question her tears. They never had. Emily was the fragile one, the one they'd always rushed to save, while I was the rock they leaned on. Now that rock was crumbling under her story. I saw the fallout first at First Grace Church that next Sunday. The sanctuary smelled of polished wood and candle wax, the familiar hum of hymns usually a comfort. But as I walked to my usual pew, I felt the shift. Mrs. Ellis, who'd baked me cookies when I led the fundraiser last fall, averted her eyes, fussing with her purse instead of waving. Her husband gave a tight nod, his smile gone. During coffee hour, the chatter around me was polite but distant, like I was a guest who'd overstayed. By midweek, my phone buzzed with texts from the quilting circle. Vague, syrupy messages like praying for peace in your family or God will sort this out. No one asked for my side. No one mentioned the $50,000 directly, but the subtext was clear. Emily's story had spread a quiet poison seeping through the community I'd served for decades. I stared at those texts, my fingers itching to reply to defend myself. But I didn't. Every message was another thread in Emily's web, and I'd need to weave my own truth carefully. The worst came when I called Mom on Wednesday hoping to clear the air. Her voice was strained, like she was holding back a sob. "Laura, we didn't want to believe it," she said, but Emily showed us proof. My heart sank. Proof. "What proof, Mom?" I asked, keeping my tone even like I was reviewing a client's ledger. She hesitated, then said, "The loan note. You signed it promising to repay the $50,000 you took. Emily's keeping it safe for us. A loan note." The words hit like a punch, something I'd never seen, never signed. My mind raced. When had Emily concocted this? Was it a scrap of paper she'd waved at them or something more elaborate? I could imagine her presenting it with a trembling hand, her voice low and earnest, selling the lie with every fiber of her being. That note was her ace, the prop that made her story undeniable to parents desperate to trust her. I drove to the park after that call, sitting on a bench under the gray October sky, my breath fogging in the chill. The note gnawed at me. If it existed, it was a fabrication, but I couldn't fight what I hadn't seen. I pulled out my phone and added to my notes. Loan note, alleged signature, Emily holds. My fingers were steady, but inside I was reeling. The church's cold shoulder, the text's Mom's words, they were all proof of how deep Emily's lie had taken root. She'd turned our family's trust into a weapon, and the community I'd poured my heart into was slipping away. I thought of the retirement savings, the $50,000 meant for Mom's doctor visits, Dad's meds, their fragile security in old age. I thought of my name, Mitchell, whispered now with pity or judgment. I wanted to storm to Emily's apartment, demand answers, but that was her game, chaos, emotion, drama. I'd play mine differently. Back home, I started a binder labeling the first tab, Accusations. I printed the church texts, Mom's call notes, every detail I could pin down. Each page was a step toward clarity, a way to fight back without raising my voice. Emily's tears might sway hearts, but facts would hold up in court. I needed that note, needed to see what she'd crafted to frame me. The next day, I called Mom again, my voice calm as a still lake. "Let me see the original note," I asked, keeping it simple like I was requesting a recipe. There was a pause, then her reply sharp with finality. "Your sister has it." Mom's words. "Your sister has it," echoed in my mind as I hung up the phone, the weight of Emily's phantom loan notes settling like fog over our Ohio town. I sat at my desk staring at the binder I'd started, its first tab labeled Accusations, now holding printed texts and call notes. I'm Laura Mitchell, the bookkeeper who finds truth in numbers, and I knew fighting Emily's lies meant building a case as solid as my ledgers. Her story had taken root, but I'd dig it up quietly without tipping her off. The church's whispers and my parents' distrust were loud, but facts would be louder. I started at the bank on Tuesday morning, the air crisp with early October chill. The First Community Bank smelled of paper and faint cologne, its fluorescent lights humming as I approached the teller counter. I'd been coming here for years, depositing checks for Mom and Dad, when their hands shook too much to write neatly. "I need transaction records for my parents' account," I said to Karen, a teller who knew me from church potlucks. Every deposit I made for them going back 18 months. She nodded, her eyes kind but curious, and printed a stack of teller slips. As I scanned them later at home, my heart steadied. There they were, my deposits $200 here, $500 there, faithfully added to their savings since Dad's carpentry slowed. I'd transferred money from my own account labeled for Mom's meds or Dad's bills, totaling far more than the $50,000 they claimed I took. These slips were my first shield proof I'd given, not stolen. I tucked them into a new binder tab, Deposits. Next, I turned to my work records. My job at Harper Accounting kept me tied to a desk or client meetings, often late into the evening. Emily's story pinned the withdrawals on specific dates, ones Mom had mentioned in passing during our tense call. I logged into my work email, scrolling through months of correspondence, client follow-ups, meeting confirmations, all time-stamped. I printed emails showing I was in Cincinnati for a client audit on one withdrawal date, another placing me at the office until 9 p.m. on a second. My time cards backed it up, clocking me in and out, nowhere near the bank when those transactions happened. I organized these into a timeline tab, each page a brick in my alibi. Emily said I was there taking their money. My records said otherwise. The real breakthrough came that Friday when I stopped by Mrs. Carter's house across the street from Mom and Dad's. She was a widow who'd always waved when I dropped off groceries for them. We stood on her porch, the scent of her rose bushes sharp in the cool air, and I asked about visitors on those withdrawal days. "Oh, Laura," she said, her voice low. "Your sister was over a lot." My Ring doorbell caught her car pulling up. My pulse quickened. "Can I see the footage?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. She showed me her app clips, time-stamped with Emily's blue sedan in the driveway, 3 dates matching the bank withdrawals. Emily, who'd claimed she was out of town or at work. I didn't ask for copies yet. That would come later with legal backing. For now, I noted the dates and times in my binder, my hands steady as I wrote Ring footage on a new tab. Mrs. Carter's eyes softened like she sensed trouble, but wouldn't pry. "You're a good daughter," she said. I smiled, but inside I was building a fortress. Back at my apartment, I spread the binder across my dining table, its pages fanning out like a map of Emily's deception. The teller slips proved I'd poured money into their account, not taken it. My work records placed me miles away when the withdrawals happened. And Mrs. Carter's footage put Emily at their house right when the money vanished. I wasn't just defending myself. I was dismantling her story piece by careful piece. I imagined her face, all tears and innocence, telling Mom and Dad I'd betrayed them. She'd counted on their trust, their fear of losing their savings to keep her safe. But I was counting on something stronger, the truth in black and white. I didn't call Emily or confront Mom again. Not yet. Every move had to be deliberate, like balancing a ledger where one wrong entry could ruin everything. The church's cold shoulder still stung, and I knew the whispers would grow louder before they stopped. But I wasn't fighting for their approval, not yet. I was fighting for my name, for the parents who'd raised me to be honest, for the life I'd built on truth. My binder was my weapon, and it was growing heavier by the day. As I closed it that night, I traced the dates on those ring clips, cross-referencing them with Emily's supposed alibis. 3 of her stories out of town at work visiting friends crumbled against my timeline. 3 of her claimed alibis collide with my timeline binder. My timeline binder sat heavy on my dining table. Its tabs, deposits, timeline ring footage marking the cracks in Emily's story. Those 3 alibis she'd spun claiming she was nowhere near Mom and Dad's house when their savings vanished had crumbled against my evidence. I'm Laura Mitchell, the bookkeeper who lives for precision, and I wasn't done digging. Emily's lies were a puzzle, and I sensed a bigger piece was missing, something that explained how she'd pulled off those withdrawals without raising suspicion. I needed to move carefully, like checking a ledger for a hidden error to uncover her next move without her knowing. I started at the bank again mid-October, the Ohio air sharp with falling leaves. The First Community Bank's lobby was quiet, just the soft tap of keyboards and the hum of an old heater. Karen, the teller who had given me the deposit slips, was there, her smile warm but cautious. I didn't ask for more records, yet too many questions might tip off Emily, who banked here too. Instead, I asked about account access casual, as if I were double-checking Mom's balance. "Anyone else authorized on their account?" I asked. Karen hesitated, then pulled up the file. There was a power of attorney, she said, temporary for your dad's surgery last spring. My pulse quickened. Dad had a minor knee procedure in April, and I remembered Mom fretting about bills while he recovered. A temporary POA made sense. They'd needed someone to handle finances during those weeks. But why Emily, not me? I was the one who'd always managed their accounts. Karen printed a copy of the POA document showing Emily's name as agent authorized to pay bills. I scanned it, noting the dates active from April to June, covering the withdrawal periods. My binder gained a new tab, POA. That evening, I sat cross-legged on my couch, the POA document spread out beside my laptop. The legalese was straightforward. Emily could access their savings for necessary expenses. But those cash withdrawals, thousands at a time, weren't utility payments or pharmacy runs. They were too large, too frequent. I called Mom, keeping my voice light, asking about the surgery period. Oh, Emily took care of everything, she said, almost proud. She paid the bills so we didn't have to worry. I didn't push, just added her words to my notes. But the withdrawals didn't add up. Bills don't come in round numbers like $5,000. I needed more something to trace where that money went. The next day, I visited the county clerk's office, a squat brick building smelling of dust and ink. The POA had been notarized, a legal requirement, so I requested the notary log. The clerk, a woman with wire-rimmed glasses, pulled the record after a quick search. The entry showed Emily's POA signed at 2:15 p.m. on April 10th, notarized by someone named Linda Hayes. But Emily had told Mom she was in Columbus that day, visiting a friend 3 hours away. I cross-checked my binder's timeline tab. One of her alibis claimed she was out of town on April 10th. The notary log said otherwise. Linda Hayes, I learned, was a friend from Emily's high school days, now a notary public. A chill ran through me. Had Emily planned this using a friend to back her up? I photocopied the log, adding it to my binder. My hands steady, but my mind racing. Back at the bank on Friday, I took a bigger step. I met with Mr. Daniels, the manager, in his small office cluttered with family photos. I'm helping my parents sort out some account issues. I said, not mentioning Emily directly. I asked for a transaction summary focusing on the POA period. He hesitated, citing privacy, but agreed to provide a redacted report since I was a known family member. The report showed transfers from Mom and Dad's account to another ending in digits I didn't recognize. Not theirs, not mine. I pressed gently. Any chance these went to a relative? Mr. Daniels frowned, then checked his system. The receiving account is tied to a name, Sarah Klein. Not family. I assume Sarah. Emily's old college roommate. Someone I'd met once at a barbecue. My stomach twisted. Why was their money going to her? That night, I dug deeper, searching public records on my laptop. Sarah Klein's name popped up in a local business registry linked to a payment app account often used for online transactions. A quick cross-reference with my binder's withdrawal dates showed a pattern. Large transfers to Sarah's account matched the POA period. Then a hunch led me to check Sarah's social media, public and unfiltered. A post from last summer showed her at a casino in Cleveland, captioned, "Big win." The timestamp was days after a $10,000 transfer. Emily had mentioned helping a friend in passing to Mom. Had she been funneling money to Sarah to cover a gambling debt? I added a new tab, transfers, and wrote Sarah Klein, possible gambling link. It wasn't proof yet, but it was a thread, and I'd pull until it unraveled. I kept my findings quiet, sharing nothing with Mom or Dad. Emily's tears had convinced them, but her lies were starting to fray. The POA gave her access. The transfers pointed to a motive darker than greed, and the notary log didn't lie. I imagined her crafting that story, her voice soft and desperate, claiming I'd stolen their future. But every step I took, every slip, every record was a step toward the truth. As I closed my binder, I circled the notary entry, April 10th, 2:15 p.m. Emily couldn't have been in Columbus. The signature time in the notary book pokes a hole in her alibi. The notary log's timestamp, April 10, 2:15 p.m. burned in my mind as I closed my binder. Its pages now thick with evidence, my deposits, my alibis. Emily's car on Ring footage, and now her lie about being in Columbus. I'm Laura Mitchell, a 42-year-old bookkeeper who finds truth in details, and I was unraveling my sister's deception one careful step at a time. But truth wasn't enough yet. Emily's story had spread beyond our kitchen table, seeping into the community I'd called home. The weight of her lies was starting to press harder, not just on my parents' trust, but on my place in our Ohio town. It began with a ping on my phone the Monday after my bank visit, the screen lighting up with our family group chat. The chat had been quiet since that Sunday ultimatum, just birthday reminders and grocery list updates. Now a message from Dad: Laura, return the money you took from us. We can't keep pretending this didn't happen. My stomach dropped. Before I could type a reply, another message from Mom. We're so disappointed, Laura. Just make it right. Then a notification. You have been removed from Mitchell family chat. The words stung like a door slamming shut. I stared at my phone, the silence louder than their accusations. Emily had gotten to them again, her tears and stories tightening their grip. I didn't cry or call them back. Instead, I screenshot the messages, printed them, and slipped them into my binder under a new tab labeled Motive. Their words weren't just hurt, they were evidence of how far Emily's influence reached. By Wednesday, the chills spread to First Grace Church, where I'd spent years organizing bake sales and teaching Sunday school. I walked into the fellowship hall for the weekly quilting circle, expecting the usual chatter over fabric scraps and coffee. The room smelled of lavender candles, but the warmth was gone. Mrs. Larson, who'd once hugged me for fixing the church budget, gave a thin smile and busied herself with a quilt square. Others glanced up, then away, their needles moving faster. Laura. Mrs. Larson said, her voice polite but clipped. Maybe sit this one out. Things need to calm down. The word hung heavy, calm, a code for the rumors Emily's story had sparked. I knotted my throat tight and left without a word. Later that day, a text from the bridge group coordinator. We're pausing your spot until this family matter settles. Praying for you. The message was kind on the surface, but it cut deep. My community, the one I'd poured my heart into, was pulling back their silence louder than any accusation. I drove home the October dusk, painting the sky gray, and felt the isolation settle like frost. The quilting circle, the bridge group, they weren't just hobbies. They were my tether to this town, to the life I'd built as the reliable Mitchell daughter. Emily's lie was unraveling that thread by thread. I imagined her all tears and sincerity, whispering to church friends about Mom's stolen medical money. She knew how to play the victim, how to make people lean in and believe. And they did. The texts kept coming, another from a choir member. Thinking of you during this trial, and one from a deacon. Let's pray for peace. Each was a polite jab, a reminder that my name was now whispered with pity or doubt. I didn't reply. I printed every message, stacking them in my Motive tab. Their silence wasn't just rejection, it was a map of Emily's manipulation, showing how she'd turned my world against me. Sitting at my dining table that night, I opened my binder, its weight grounding me. The Motive tab was growing: Dad's chat message, Mom's plea, the church text, the quilting circle's excuse. Each one was a piece of Emily's strategy, her way of isolating me to make her story stick. I pictured her telling Mom and Dad about the loan note, her voice soft, convincing them I'd betrayed their trust. She'd counted on their fear of losing their savings, of facing old age with nothing to blind them. But she hadn't counted on me. I wasn't the sister who cried or begged. I was the one who kept receipts, who saw patterns in chaos. Those texts, those rejections, they weren't just pain. They were proof of her influence, and I'd use them to show why they believed her. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, the hum of my apartment's heater the only sound. The church's cold shoulder hurt, but it also clarified things. Emily's lie wasn't just about money. It was about control, about keeping Mom and Dad in her corner. the group chat removal. The paused invitations, they were her victories, but they were also her mistake. Every snub was another entry in my binder, another reason to keep going. I wouldn't call her out, not yet. I wouldn't storm into church or text back in anger. That's what she wanted, a fight, a scene, something to twist into more lies. Instead, I'd let her think she was winning. I'd build my case in silence, turning their rejection into my strength. I won't match their volume. I'll build their silence into evidence. The silence from my family and church was deafening, but I'd turned it into fuel, filling my binder's motive tab with their accusations and rejections. I'm Laura Mitchell, a 42-year-old bookkeeper who finds clarity in numbers, and I knew Emily's lies were crumbling under the weight of my evidence. The notary log's contradiction had exposed her false alibi, but I needed more than hints of a gambling debt through Sarah Klein's account. I needed to follow the money itself to trace its path directly to Emily and prove she'd taken the $50,000 she pinned on me. I worked in the shadows, careful not to alert her, building my case like a ledger that balanced truth against deception. I returned to First Community Bank on a chilly Monday morning, the Ohio air thick with the scent of wet leaves. The lobby was quiet, just the soft clack of a teller's keyboard and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. I'd already gotten deposit slips and a POA copy, but now I needed hard proof of where the money went. I asked for Mr. Daniels, the manager whose office I'd visited before. His desk was cluttered with coffee mugs and a photo of his grandkids, a reminder of the normalcy I was fighting to reclaim. "I'm sorting out some discrepancies for my parents," I said, keeping my tone professional like I was auditing a client's books. "Can you confirm the recipient account for those transfers from April to June?" He raised an eyebrow but nodded, pulling up the records on his computer. After a moment, he slid a redacted printout across the desk. "The transfers went to an account ending in 3742, he said. My heart skipped. I'd seen those digits before on Emily's bank app during a family dinner months ago when she'd bragged about a new savings account. I pressed further, casual but precise. "Any chance it's tied to a payment app like for online transactions?" Mr. Daniels checked again, his fingers pausing. "It's linked to a gambling app, BetRiser, registered to an individual, not a business." I kept my face neutral, but inside I was reeling. Emily's gambling wasn't just a hunch anymore. The money was flowing straight to her. I thanked him and left the printout tucked into my purse. At home, I added it to my binder under the Transfers tab, cross-referencing the dates with the withdrawals I'd already documented. The amounts, $5,000, $10,000, $7,000, matched the missing funds. And the account digit screamed Emily. But I needed more than numbers. I needed a witness. The next day, I went back to the bank, this time approaching Karen at the teller counter. She'd always been kind, slipping me extra peppermints at church potlucks. I leaned in, keeping my voice low. "Karen, those withdrawals from my parents' account, did you ever see who made them?" Her eyes flickered with recognition, and she glanced around before answering. "It was your sister Emily. I saw her at the counter signing for cash on at least 2 of those dates." My pulse quickened. "Is there footage?" I asked, careful not to push too hard. She leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "We have security tapes, but you'd need a court order to access them. If a judge asks, we'll cooperate." I nodded, memorizing her words, and added them to my binder. Teller ID. Emily footage available. Karen's hint was gold, a promise of visual proof that could nail Emily's lie. That evening, I dug deeper, sitting at my dining table with my laptop glowing in the dim light. The bank records and Karen's confirmation were damning, but something else caught my eye in the transaction summary Mr. Daniels had provided. Tucked among the transfers was a separate entry, a $15,000 loan in Mom and Dad's names taken out in May, now marked delinquent with interest piling up. I froze. My parents hadn't mentioned any loan, and they'd never borrowed without telling me. I called the bank's automated line, punching in their account number to verify. The recorded voice confirmed it, a personal loan initiated during the POA period with payments overdue. Emily's name wasn't on it directly, but the timing screamed her involvement. She'd had access through the POA, and the loan's date aligned with a large transfer to her account. I pictured her at the bank, charming the clerk, signing for money that wasn't hers, all while claiming it was for bills. I added a new page to my binder, Loan Delinquent May Emily's POA. As I closed my laptop, the pieces were falling into place. The transfers to Emily's account linked to a gambling app showed her motive wasn't just greed, it was desperation. Karen's sighting put her at the scene, and the footage she hinted at could seal it. The delinquent loan was another thread tying her actions to real harm interest, eating away at Mom and Dad's savings, their security eroding with every missed payment. I hadn't confronted her, hadn't told Mom or Dad what I'd found. They still believed her, still saw me as the thief. But my binder was growing each page a step closer to exposing her. I leaned back, the quiet of my apartment wrapping around me like a shield. Emily thought she'd won, but she'd left a trail. And I was following it. If a judge asks, we'll cooperate, the teller whispers. Karen's whispered promise, if a judge asks, we'll cooperate, rang in my ears as I left the bank. The weight of the delinquent loan and Emily's gambling-linked transfers heavy in my binder. I'm Laura Mitchell, a 42-year-old bookkeeper who thrives on untangling knots. But this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about why Mom and Dad believed Emily over me, why they'd turned their trust to her tears instead of my truth. I needed to understand their choice, not to excuse it, but to see the roots of their faith in her. Only then could I fight her lie without breaking them. I drove to Aunt Carol's house that Saturday, the Ohio sky heavy with clouds threatening rain. Her small bungalow smelled of cinnamon and old books. A haven from the storm brewing in our family. Carol, Mom's older sister, had always been the family's quiet observer, her sharp eyes missing nothing. We sat at her kitchen table, a chipped teapot steaming between us. And I asked about Emily's history with Mom and Dad. They've always had a soft spot for her, Carol said, stirring her tea, her voice steady but tinged with regret. When she dropped out of college, they paid her tuition debt $10,000, no questions asked. Then her rent when she lost that job in Dayton. Always second chances for Emily. I nodded, picturing Mom writing checks, Dad grumbling but signing them. Carol leaned forward, her gaze piercing. They saw her as fragile Laura. You were the strong one, so they leaned on you and rescued her. Her words stung, but they fit. Emily's tears had always opened their wallets, while my reliability was expected, not celebrated. I jotted, past bailouts, tuition, rent in my notebook. Another piece of the puzzle. Later that day, I visited Mom and Dad's house, offering to help with laundry to get inside without suspicion. The air was thick with tension, Mom's eyes avoiding mine as she handed me a basket. In the living room, I noticed a yellowed envelope on the coffee table, its edges frayed, labeled Family Records in Mom's careful handwriting. While she was in the kitchen, I peeked inside, my heart pounding. It held receipts and notes, a log of money I'd given them over the years, $300 for Mom's doctor visit in 2023, $500 for Dad's truck repair last winter, $200 for their anniversary dinner. The totals added up to thousands, all my contributions meticulously recorded. But Emily's story claimed I'd taken $50,000, a number that dwarfed my gifts. I photographed the pages with my phone, careful not to disturb the envelope, and later added them to my binder under a new tab, Contributions. Mom's records were a shield proof of my support against Emily's fabricated theft. That evening, alone in my apartment, I sat with the binder open, the yellowed pages staring back. Mom's log showed my love in numbers, but it also showed why they believed Emily. They were scared of running out of money in their old age, of losing the savings they'd scraped together for prescriptions and emergencies. Emily's story, with its tearful urgency about Mom's medical money, played on that fear. They couldn't afford to doubt her, not when she presented a loan note and a narrative that promised security. I remembered Dad's tired eyes, Mom's trembling hands, They weren't cruel, just desperate to protect what little they had left. Emily knew that fear used it like a lever to pry their trust away from me. I added a note to my motive tab. Parents' fear of financial ruin. It wasn't an excuse, but it explained why her lies took hold so easily. I thought about calling them, laying out the bank transfers, the notary contradiction, but I stopped myself. They weren't ready to hear it, not while Emily's voice still echoed in their heads. Carol's words came back to me as I sipped cold tea staring at the binder. "They're not bad people, Laura," she'd said, her voice soft but firm. "They're scared, and Emily's their blind spot. Give them truth without taking their dignity, and they'll take it." Her advice was a lifeline, a reminder that this wasn't just about winning. It was about saving our family without shattering it. I closed the binder, my resolve hardening. Emily's lies had built a wall, but I'd dismantle it with facts, not anger. I'd show them the truth, and I'd do it with care. Give them truth without taking their dignity, Aunt says, and they'll take it. Aunt Carol's words. Give them truth without taking their dignity stayed with me as I closed my binder. Its pages now thick with proof of Emily's deception and Mom and Dad's blind trust. I'm Laura Mitchell, a 42-year-old bookkeeper who finds solace in facts, and I was determined to let those facts speak even as the weight of my family's rejection grew heavier. Thanksgiving was approaching, and with it a chance to see Mom and Dad to gauge their resolve. I didn't expect a warm holiday, but I wasn't prepared for the ambush waiting in their dining room where Emily's lies would turn a family gathering into a public trial. The air in Mom and Dad's house smelled of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie, the table set with the good china, a flicker of normalcy that felt like a cruel tease. Relatives filled the room. Cousins, uncles, Aunt Carol chatting over wine glasses and mashed potatoes. I sat near the end, my hands folded in my lap, forcing a smile as Mom passed the gravy. Dad's eyes avoided mine, his jaw tight, and Emily sat across from me, her face a mask of concern, her hazel eyes catching the candlelight. The meal started quietly, but halfway through Dad cleared his throat, his voice cutting through the clink of forks. "We need to address something," he said, his gaze locking on me. "Laura, this is your last chance. Return the $50 and $1,000 you took, or we're filing in court next week." The room froze, conversations dying as all eyes turned to me. My heart pounded, but I kept my face still like I was balancing a client's books under pressure. Uncle Ray shifted uncomfortably. Cousin Lisa's fork hovered midair. The accusation hung heavy, public, and raw, stripping away the holiday's warmth. Emily leaned forward, her voice trembling with rehearsed grief. "Laura, how could you forge Mom's signature on that loan note?" she said loud enough for everyone to hear. "You knew it was their medical money, their future." The word forge hit like a blade her lie, now a spectacle for aunts and cousins to judge. I felt the heat of their stares, the weight of their doubt. My instinct was to shout back, to lay out the bank transfers, the notary log my deposits, but that was her trap to make me look desperate. Instead, I slipped my phone under the table, opened the voice recorder, and tapped start. Ohio's a one-party consent state. I could record without telling her. My fingers were steady, but my chest tightened as I let her talk, let her dig her own grave. She kept going, her voice rising with emotion. "I tried to cover for you, Laura, when the ATM camera." She stopped, her eyes widening as she realized her slip. The room didn't catch it, but I did. ATM camera. She'd just admitted knowing about bank footage, something only the guilty would mention. My pulse raced, but I stayed silent, letting the recorder catch every word. The table was quiet. Relatives glancing between us, unsure what to make of her pause. Then my phone buzzed softly against my thigh, a text. I glanced down, shielding the screen. It was from Cousin Lisa, who sat across the room, her face neutral but her eyes sharp. The message was a photo Emily at a Cleveland casino last summer, smiling with a stack of chips time-stamped days after a major withdrawal from Mom and Dad's account. "Found this in my old photos," Lisa wrote. "Thought you should know." My breath caught. Lisa, who'd barely spoken to me since the rumors started, had just handed me a piece of gold tying Emily's gambling to the missing money. I kept my face calm, slipping the phone back into my pocket. The dinner resumed, but the air was thick, relatives murmuring, casting glances my way. Emily recovered, her voice softening as she apologized to the table for family drama. But her slip echoed in my mind, and Lisa's text burned in my pocket. I didn't confront her, didn't call out her lie. Not yet. I'd learned from my binder deposits timeline transfers that truth needed time to build. This dinner was her stage, but I was rewriting the script. I ate quietly, the turkey tasteless as relatives avoided my eyes, their whispers a reminder of how far Emily's story had spread. But Lisa's text was a crack in that story, a sign that not everyone was fooled. I added the moment to my mental ledger. Emily's slip, Lisa's photo, my recording. They'd all go into my binder under a new tab I'd create tonight. Confrontations. As dessert was served, Mom tried to lighten the mood, passing around pie, but the tension lingered. Dad's ultimatum. Emily's accusation, the silence of relatives, it was a public humiliation designed to break me. But I wouldn't break. I'd record, collect, and wait. Emily thought she'd won. Thought her tears and lies would keep her safe. But her slip about the ATM camera, Lisa's unexpected allyship, they were gifts I'd use. I looked across the table, meeting Emily's eyes for a moment, her smile faltering. She didn't know what I had, what I was building. The room goes still enough to hear a fork sit down. The Thanksgiving dinner's silence, broken only by the clink of a fork, lingered in my mind as I drove home, Emily's slip about the ATM camera and Cousin Lisa's casino photo burning in my pocket. I'm Laura Mitchell, a 42-year-old bookkeeper who lives for precision. And that night had given me more than pain, it had given me evidence. My binder now held a recording, a photo, and a growing web of facts pointing to Emily's lies. But facts alone wouldn't sway Mom and Dad, not while they clung to her story. I needed to take the next step to turn my quiet audit into a legal defense, and do it without losing the family I was fighting to save. The Monday after Thanksgiving, I sat in a small law office downtown, the air heavy with the scent of leather and coffee. Mr. Harold Grayson, a local attorney with gray hair and a calm demeanor, listened as I laid out my case. My binder sat open on his desk. Its tabs, deposits, timeline transfers. Confrontations organized like a ledger. I explained the $50,000 accusation, Emily's gambling-linked transfers, the notary log contradiction, and the recorded slip at dinner. I need to clear my name, I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. Grayson nodded, flipping through my pages. We'll start discovery, he said, his tone matter-of-fact. I'll subpoena the bank's security footage from those withdrawal dates, the notary logs from Linda Hayes, and full transaction histories for your parents' account. He jotted notes, his pen scratching softly. These will show who accessed the money and when. I felt a flicker of relief. Someone was listening. Someone who saw the truth in my numbers. I added his plan to my binder under a new tab, Legal. Grayson's subpoenas were my next weapon, turning whispers of evidence into court-ready proof. That evening, I sat at my dining table, the Ohio wind rattling my apartment's windows. I thought about Mom and Dad, their faces at Thanksgiving hardened by Emily's accusations. I didn't want to drag them through a courtroom to air our family's pain in public. Aunt Carol's advice echoed, give them truth without taking their dignity. So I drafted a repayment plan, a way to save their pride while protecting their future. The proposal was simple. I'd help replenish their savings through a structured trust funded by selling some of my own investments with no personal gain for me. Emily would need to attend a financial literacy course and contribute to the fund over time. It was a peace offering, a chance for them to step back without admitting they'd been wrong. I typed it carefully, each word measured, and printed 2 copies, one for them, one for my binder. I knew they might not take it, but I had to try. The next day, I drove to Mom and Dad's house, the proposal in a sealed envelope. The living room smelled of pine from their early Christmas decorations, but the warmth was gone. Mom sat on the couch, her hands folded tightly while Dad stood by the window, his back rigid. "I'm not here to argue," I said, sliding the envelope across the coffee table. "This is a plan to restore your savings, no court needed." Mom's eyes flicked to the envelope, but Dad's voice cut in sharp and cold. "If you were innocent, Laura, you'd just pay it back now. No fancy plans." Mom nodded, her voice softer but firm. "Emily says you're dodging responsibility. An innocent person wouldn't need all this." Their words stung, but I didn't flinch. They were parroting Emily's script, her loan note still their shield. I wanted to tell them about the bank transfers, the notary log, but Grayson's advice stopped me. "Stay calm. Let the evidence speak." "Read it," I said quietly, standing to leave. "It's for you, not me." They didn't open it, but I added their response to my motive tab, another mark of Emily's hold. Back at Grayson's office later that week, I recounted the visit. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes steady. "You did the right thing offering a way out," he said, "but they're not ready. People cling to what they believe until the facts are undeniable. Let the documents speak while you remain composed." His words were a lifeline grounding me in the chaos. He showed me the subpoena draft's requests for the bank's footage, the notary's full records, and detailed transaction logs. "These will show Emily's hand," he said. "The court will see the transfers, the timing, everything." I nodded, picturing the footage Karen had hinted at Emily at the teller counter signing for cash that wasn't hers. My binder was my anchor, but Grayson's subpoenas would be my sword cutting through her lies in a courtroom. As I left his office, the December chill bit at my fingers, but I felt a spark of hope. The subpoenas were in motion, the truth inching closer. Mom and Dad's rejection hurt, but it also clarified my path. They believed Emily because they feared losing everything: savings, dignity, their fragile future. I wouldn't fight their fear with anger. I'd fight it with proof. I stopped at the post office on my way home, the proposal envelope heavy in my hands. I could have let their refusal stop me, could have tucked it away in my binder as another failed attempt. But I wasn't done trying to save them, even from themselves. I mailed the offer to their house, addressed to both, and slipped a copy to Grayson for the court file. It was my last gesture before the legal storm. I mail the offer anyway and copy the court. Mailing the repayment offer to Mom and Dad with a copy to the court felt like setting a final marker in the sand. I'm Laura Mitchell, a 42-year-old bookkeeper who lives by the truth in numbers. And though my parents had rejected my attempt to save their dignity, I was ready to let my evidence fight for me. Emily's so-called loan note, the cornerstone of her lie that I'd stolen $50,000, was still out of my reach, supposedly safe in her hands. But I knew it was a fabrication, and I needed to dismantle it with the same precision I'd used to build my binder. If I could prove the note was a fake, her entire story would collapse. I started at the county clerk's office on a brisk December morning, the Ohio air sharp with the promise of snow. The same clerk with wire-rimmed glasses who'd helped me with the notary log was there, her desk cluttered with files. I'd learned from Mr. Grayson, my attorney, that Emily's note, allegedly signed by me to borrow the $50,000, had been notarized, giving it legal weight. I asked to see the notary records for any document tied to my name or my parents' account from last spring. The clerk pulled up the database, her fingers clicking softly. "There's nothing here for a loan note under Mitchell April through June," she said, frowning. "The notary listed on your sister's POA, Linda Hayes, didn't log anything else for your family." My pulse quickened. If the note was notarized, there should be a record. I pressed further. "What about the stamp used?" She checked again, her eyes narrowing. "The stamp number Emily provided, it's registered to a notary in Montgomery County, not ours. We were in Greene County, an hour away. No log entry, wrong county, a red flag." I jotted notary stamp mismatch in my notebook, adding it to my binder's legal tab. The note was starting to look like a ghost. Back home, I dug into the note's details based on what Mom had described: a typed document dated April 15th, with my signature promising to repay $50,000. I knew I'd never signed it, but I needed to prove it was forged. I opened my laptop and researched the font Mom mentioned Times New Roman she'd said because it looked official. But something nagged at me. I called a colleague from Harper Accounting who'd worked on document verification for audits. "Can you check if a font version matches a specific date?" I asked, emailing her a sample of Times New Roman from a 2023 audit report. She called back an hour later. The version of Times New Roman in that sample didn't exist in April. It was updated in July for Microsoft Office. My heart raced. If Emily's note used that font, it couldn't have been created when she claimed. I added font mismatch post-April to my binder, my hands steady as I taped in the email exchange. The note wasn't just missing a notary log, it was a fabrication from a later date. The real breakthrough came that evening when I revisited Mom's yellowed envelope from my last visit. I'd photographed its contents, receipts, my contributions, but hadn't looked closely at the personal items. Sitting at my dining table, the Ohio wind howling outside, I zoomed in on the photos. Tucked among the papers was a birthday card I'd sent Dad 3 years ago, my signature bold in blue ink. I froze. Mom had said the loan note had my signature just like your cards. I pulled up the photo, studying the loops of my L and the slant of my M. If Emily had used this card to trace my signature, it would explain how she'd faked it. I called Grayson, my voice calm but urgent. "Can we compare signatures forensically?" He confirmed it was simple. A handwriting expert could spot tracing by checking stroke pressure and ink overlap. I emailed him the card's photo, adding it to my contributions tab with a note. "Signature source possible tracing." Emily hadn't just lied, she'd built her deception on stolen pieces of our past. I leaned back, the hum of my apartment's heater grounding me. The note's flaws were glaring now, a font that didn't exist. A notary stamp from the wrong county, a signature likely traced from a card meant for love, not theft. This wasn't a one-time lie. It was a pattern, a serial deception to cover her tracks. I pictured Emily crafting the note, maybe at her desk, thinking she'd outsmarted me. But she'd underestimated my precision, my need to make the numbers add up. The church's whispers. Mom and Dad's rejection. They all hinged on this note, her proof of my guilt. If I could tear it apart, her story would unravel. I didn't call Mom or confront Emily. Not yet. Grayson's subpoenas were in motion, pulling bank footage and logs, but the note was the heart of her lie. I imagined Mom clutching it, believing it was real, and Dad's stern nod as Emily presented it. They'd trusted her because they couldn't face the alternative, their fragile daughter, the one they'd always bailed out, betraying them. But the truth was in my binder, growing heavier with every page. The font, the stamp, the traced signature, they were cracks in her facade, and I'd pry them open in court. If the note falls, the story stitched to it unravels next. The forged loan note was crumbling its font notary stamp, and traced signature exposing Emily's lies like cracks in a dam. I'm Laura Mitchell, a 42-year-old bookkeeper who finds truth in details. And with my binder growing heavier, I was closer to dismantling her story. But as I sat in my Ohio apartment, the December wind rattling the windows, a heavier weight settled in my chest. The fight was taking a toll not just on Emily's facade, but on my heart. I loved Mom and Dad despite their distrust, and the idea of dragging them through court felt like betraying the family I was trying to save. I needed to weigh the cost of peace against the price of truth. I leaned back in my chair, the glow of a single lamp casting shadows across my dining table. Memories flooded in, unbidden but vivid. I saw Dad after his knee surgery last spring, stubborn but grateful as I drove him to rehab appointments, his gruff thanks kid warming the car. I remembered Mom's arthritis flaring last winter, her hands too swollen to hold a mug, and how I'd sat with her rubbing cream into her knuckles, her smile soft with relief. These moments were why I'd poured money into their savings, why I'd balanced their checkbooks without complaint. The thought of paying the $50,000 Emily claimed I owed just to end this fight tugged at me. I could sell some investments, dip into my own savings, and make it go away. No court, no public shame for them. I could let Emily win, let Mom and Dad keep their pride, and rebuild quietly. The temptation was real. A whisper promising peace, a return to Sunday dinners without accusations. But as I stared at my binder, its tabs, deposits, transfers. Legal grounded me. Paying would mean enabling Emily's lies, letting her walk away with their trust and their money. It would mean accepting the label of thief, letting the church whispers become truth. I thought of Aunt Carol's words, give them truth without taking their dignity. Truth wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about setting boundaries, protecting Mom and Dad from Emily's next scheme. If I paid, she'd do it again, another emergency, another tearful story. I couldn't save them by surrendering. Truth, hard as it was the only way to heal us all. I added a note to my motive tab. Paying enables lies. Truth builds boundaries. My resolve hardened, but the ache remained. Love for my parents tangled with the pain of their doubt. The next day, I attended First Grace Church, hoping for a moment of solace. The sanctuary's stained glass glowed under the winter sun, but the pews felt colder than usual. I sat alone, the familiar hymns failing to lift the weight in my chest. After the service, Mrs. Ellis, the pastor's wife, approached me in the fellowship hall, her face kind but serious. She'd always been warm, even through the quilting circle's withdrawal, and I braced myself for another vague praying for you. Instead, she handed me a small envelope, her voice low. Laura, I found this in the church office, left anonymously. I think you need to see it. My hands trembled as I opened it, pulling out a photo. It was grainy, taken from across the street at First Community Bank, showing Emily at the teller window, signing a withdrawal slip. But in the corner, reflected in the glass, was Mom's silhouette, in a car outside her face, half hidden but unmistakable. My breath caught. The date stamped on the photo, April 12th, matched one of Emily's withdrawals. Mom had been there watching, or at least present. She knew something, even if she'd buried it. I thanked Mrs. Ellis, my voice steady despite the storm inside. Back home, I studied the photo, my heart sinking. Mom's presence didn't mean she'd planned it, but it meant she'd seen Emily at the bank, maybe even driven her there. Had she thought it was a legitimate transaction, part of the POA? Or had she suspected and stayed silent, afraid of what it meant? I remembered her avoiding my eyes at church, her quick defense of Emily. She wasn't complicit in the lie, but she'd let it grow, choosing silence over questions. I added the photo to my binder under a new tab, Witnesses. It wasn't just evidence against Emily, it was a painful truth about Mom, one I'd have to face gently. I sat with that truth all evening, the photo staring back from my table. Paying the $50,000 would have spared them court, but it would have buried this moment, Mom's reflection, her partial awareness. Truth wasn't just for me. It was for them, to free them from Emily's hold. I thought of Dad's rehab, Mom's arthritis, and how I'd fought for their security. I'd fight for their clarity now, even if it hurt. Mrs. Ellis's gift was more than evidence. It was a turning point, a proof with a face and a date. The photo from Mrs. Ellis showing Emily at the bank with Mom's reflection in the car window gave my evidence a face and a date, a stark reminder of how deep this betrayal ran. I'm Laura Mitchell, a 42-year-old bookkeeper who finds truth in precision, and that image had shaken me not just for what it proved about Emily, but for what it suggested about Mom's silence. My binder was a fortress now filled with bank records, notary logs, and recordings, but I needed to tighten the web to make Emily's lies undeniable with digital proof. In the quiet of my Ohio apartment, with December's chill pressing against the windows, I turned to the cloud where every timestamp and post could trap her deception. I started with the family group chat, the one that had cut me out after Dad's accusation of theft. Before they could delete more, I contacted my phone provider requesting metadata for the chat from October to November. The process was straightforward. I'd used the same tactic for clients auditing business communications. By Wednesday, I had a PDF file detailing every message, including timestamps and senders. There it was, Dad's message on October 6th at 7:42 p.m. Laura, returned the money you took, followed by Mom's. We're so disappointed at 7:45 p.m. The metadata confirmed the exact moment I was removed from the chat, 7:50 p.m., a digital footprint of their distrust. I printed the file highlighting the timestamps and added it to my binder under a new tab, Digital. These weren't just words. They were a record of Emily's influence, proof of how she'd turned them against me. Next, I revisited the Ring doorbell footage from Mrs. Carter, my parents' neighbor. She'd shared clips of Emily's car at their house on 3 withdrawal dates, April 12th, May 3rd, and June 15th, when Emily claimed she was elsewhere. I had the timestamps, but I needed more to seal her alibi's collapse. Emily was active on Instagram posting selfies and stories, so I opened my laptop and scrolled her public profile. On April 12th, she'd posted a coffee shop photo geotagged at a Dayton cafe claiming she was out with friends. But the Ring clip showed her car at Mom and Dad's at 2:30 p.m., just 20 minutes after the cafe post. On May 3rd, an Instagram story of her working late was tagged at her office, but the doorbell footage caught her pulling into the driveway at 4:15 p.m. June 15th was even clearer, a post about a weekend getaway in Columbus contradicted by her car at the house at 11:00 a.m. I downloaded the post noting the geotags and timestamps and cross-referenced them with the Ring clips in my binder's timeline tab. The mismatch was stark. Emily's digital trail betrayed her physical presence. The Thanksgiving audio was my final piece. I'd recorded Emily's slip about the ATM camera cover-up during dinner, but I needed to anchor it in time. She'd posted an Instagram photo that night, a close-up of the oven with a turkey captioned "Holiday Prep." The timestamp read 6:22 p.m., November 27th. I transcribed the audio pinpointing her slip at 6:35 p.m., just 13 minutes later. The oven photo placed her in Mom and Dad's kitchen, not out of town, as she'd later claimed to dodge questions about the withdrawals. I printed the transcript and the Instagram post, stapling them together in my Confrontations tab. The audio's raw emotion, her panicked pause after mentioning the ATM, paired with the photo's timestamp, was a knockout blow to her alibi. She couldn't be in two places at once, and the cloud had caught her. Sitting at my dining table, the glow of my laptop casting shadows, I felt the weight of my evidence settle. The chat metadata showed Mom and Dad's accusations driven by Emily's lies. The Ring clips aligned with her Instagram geotags proved she was at the house when the money vanished. The Thanksgiving audio tied to her oven post nailed her presence and her slip. Each piece was a digital thread weaving a net she couldn't escape. I imagined her crafting those posts thinking they'd cover her tracks, her tears convincing Mom and Dad, while her phone betrayed her. My binder wasn't just paper anymore. It was a map of her deception. Every entry a timestamp, a place, a picture. I didn't call her or tell Mom and Dad. Not yet. The court date was approaching, and Mr. Grayson would use these to dismantle her story. I leaned back, the hum of my apartment's heater steadying me. The church's whispers had faded, but this fight wasn't about their approval. It was about truth. About protecting Mom and Dad from Emily's next lie. My binder was my weapon, and the cloud had given it teeth. Every lie now has a time, a place, and a picture. The digital web I'd woven chat metadata Ring clips, Emily's oven photo had pinned her lies with precision, each time stamp a nail in her story's coffin. I'm Laura Mitchell, a 42-year-old bookkeeper who thrives on clarity. And my binder now held a fortress of evidence bank transfers, a forged note, Mom's reflection in that damning photo. But as I sat in my Ohio apartment, the January chill seeping through the windows, I felt the weight of what came next. Court loomed, and with it the risk of shattering Mom and Dad's pride. I wanted to give them one last chance to step back to protect their future without a public fight. I needed a way to hold Emily accountable while keeping their dignity intact. I spent a quiet Sunday drafting a new proposal, my laptop screen glowing in the dim light of my dining room. The Repayment and Protection Trust was my olive branch designed to restore Mom and Dad's savings without a cent going to me. I'd fund it by liquidating some of my retirement savings, about $30,000, enough to cover their immediate medical needs like Mom's arthritis injections and Dad's prescriptions. A local credit union would manage the trust, ensuring transparency. Emily would contribute over time, starting with small payments, proving she could change. The conditions were firm but fair. Emily had to enroll in a financial literacy course at the community center, learning to manage money instead of manipulating it. She'd also write a formal apology, not just to me, but to Mom and Dad, acknowledging her role in their loss. I typed every detail carefully, picturing Mom's trembling hands, Dad's stern jaw. This wasn't about winning. It was about healing, giving them security without the shame of court. I printed the proposal, stapled it neatly, and added a copy to my binder under a new tab. Resolution. The next day I drove to Mom and Dad's house, the winter sun pale against the snow-dusted lawn. The living room was warm, smelling of coffee, and the cedar of their Christmas tree still up past New Year's. They sat on the couch, Mom clutching a mug, Dad's arms crossed. I handed them the proposal, my voice steady. "This trust will replace the $50,000, I said. No court, no lawyers." Emily takes a course, writes an apology, and we move forward. Mom's eyes scanned the pages, but Dad cut in, his voice sharp. "If you didn't take the money, Laura, why offer this? Innocent people don't pay." His words stung, echoing Emily's narrative. Mom nodded, her voice soft but resolute. "Emily says you're trying to buy your way out. We need the truth in court." I swallowed the urge to argue, to lay out the bank footage, the forged note. They weren't ready, still caught in Emily's web. I left the proposal on the table, saying only, "Think about it. It's for you." Their rejection hurt, but I added their words to my motive tab, another sign of Emily's hold. Back at Mr. Grayson's office that week, I shared the outcome. His law office smelled of old books and wax polish, a calm contrast to my churning thoughts. "You gave them a fair option," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Their choice to go to court clarifies our next step." He showed me the evidence index he'd prepared for the small claims court, a concise list of our subpoena's bank footage, showing Emily at the teller notary logs with no record of the loan note transaction histories tied to her account, and my Thanksgiving recording of her ATM slip. My binders tabs, deposits, timeline transfers, legal were distilled into a legal filing, each page numbered and stamped. I added the rejected proposal to the index, noting it as evidence of my good faith. "This shows you tried to avoid escalation," Grayson said. "The judge will see your restraint." I nodded, picturing the courtroom, the moment when Emily's lies would face my facts. The index was my shield, built from months of quiet work. As I left his office, the cold bit at my fingers, but my resolve burned steady. Mom and Dad's refusal wasn't just stubbornness. It was fear. Fear of admitting they'd trusted the wrong daughter. Emily had preyed on that, her tears and loan note convincing them I'd betrayed their future. But the trust I'd offered was my truth, a way to protect them without destroying them. They'd chosen court, and I'd honor that not with anger, but with evidence. I stopped by the county courthouse that afternoon, the marble halls echoing with footsteps. I handed the evidence index to the clerk, a young woman with a brisk smile. She stamped it, glanced at the schedule, and said, "Your case is set for Monday, 9 a.m. I thanked her, my heart steady. The fight was coming, and I was ready. The clerk sets Monday for Judgment Day. The clerk's words, "Your case is set for Monday, 9 a.m., echoed as I left the courthouse, my binder heavy with evidence that would finally expose Emily's lies. I'm Laura Mitchell, a 42-year-old bookkeeper who lives for the truth in numbers, and I'd built a fortress of facts to reclaim my name. The Ohio winter bit at my knuckles as I drove home, but my resolve burned steady. I'd offered Mom and Dad a way out with the trust, but they'd chosen court, clinging to Emily's story. Today, in the small claims courtroom, I'd let my evidence speak, hoping to save them from her deception without breaking their hearts. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and stale coffee, its fluorescent lights casting a stark glow over the wooden benches. I sat beside Mr. Grayson, my attorney. My binder open on the table, its tabs, deposits, transfers, legal witnesses ready to tell my story. Across the room, Mom and Dad sat with Emily, their faces drawn. Emily's eyes darting nervously. The judge, a gray-haired man with a no-nonsense air, called the case Mitchell versus Mitchell. Dad stood first, his voice steady but heavy. Laura took $50,000 from our savings, he said money for my wife's medical bills, our retirement. We have a signed loan note. Mom nodded, her hands twisting a tissue. She betrayed us, she added softly. Emily took the stand next, her voice trembling with practiced grief. Laura forged my signature to take the money, she said, tears welling. I tried to protect her, but I couldn't. The room was quiet, relatives in the back, Uncle Ray, cousin Lisa, watching, their expressions unreadable. I kept my face calm, but inside my heart pounded. Their words were a script I'd heard before, but today I had the stage. Grayson stood, his voice measured. Your Honor, we have evidence contradicting these claims. He started with the bank video subpoenaed from First Community Bank. The screen flickered to life, showing Emily at the teller counter on April 12th, signing for a $10,000 cash withdrawal, her face clear under the camera. Karen, the teller, took the stand next, her voice steady. That's Emily Mitchell, she confirmed. She made multiple withdrawals, claiming power of attorney for bills. The room shifted, Mom's hand tightening on her tissue, Dad's jaw clenching. Grayson moved to the notary records, presenting the log from Linda Hayes. No entry exists for a loan note in April, he said, holding up the document. The stamp Emily provided is from Montgomery County, not Greene, where the note was allegedly signed. A murmur rippled through the relatives. I watched Emily, her fingers gripping the table, her composure fraying. Grayson saved the Thanksgiving audio for last, playing the recording I'd made in secret. Emily's voice filled the courtroom, clear and panicked. I tried to cover for you, Laura, when the ATM camera. The clip cut off, but the damage was done. Grayson turned to the judge. This slip suggests Ms. Emily Mitchell knew about bank cameras, implying guilt. Combined with the forged note and video, it's clear who took the money. Emily's face paled, her eyes darting to Mom and Dad, who sat frozen. The judge leaned forward, his gaze sharp. Ms. Mitchell, he said to Emily. Explain this. She stammered, her voice breaking. I didn't mean to hurt them, she said, tears spilling. I had debts, gambling debts. I used their money to pay them off, thinking I'd replace it. The courtroom went still, the truth hanging heavy. Mom covered her mouth. Dad's shoulders slumped, and I felt a pang, not of victory but of sorrow for the pain this caused them. Grayson rested our case, and I took the stand, briefly presenting my binder's deposits tab. I gave them thousands over the years, I said, my voice steady. I never took a cent. The judge nodded, flipping through the evidence index. Relatives in the back began to shift, Uncle Ray nodding slightly, cousin Lisa standing taller. When the judge called for final statements, Dad stayed silent, his eyes on the floor. Emily sobbed but offered no defense. The judge's ruling was swift. The case against Laura Mitchell is dismissed with prejudice. The evidence clearly shows Emily Mitchell misused funds. He paused, looking at Mom and Dad. Your trust was misplaced, but the truth is clear. As he spoke, Lisa and Uncle Ray moved to my side, their presence a quiet show of support. Aunt Carol joined them, her hand on my shoulder. The family I'd feared lost was starting to realign. I looked at Mom and Dad, their faces etched with shock and shame. Emily's confession had stripped her lie bare, but it also laid bare their mistake in believing her. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. My binder, my evidence, had done the talking. As the courtroom emptied, the judge removed his glasses, his voice low but firm. Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, he said, looking at my parents. You owe this court and your daughter the truth. Mom's question. Can you come home Sunday hung in the air as I stood outside First Grace Church, the Ohio winter, biting at my fingers. I'm Laura Mitchell, a 42-year-old bookkeeper who'd fought for truth with a binder full of evidence. And though my parents' courtroom apology had begun to mend our rift, I knew healing required more than words. I'd won in court, but the real victory was rebuilding our family on honest ground. As I looked at the church doors, I saw a chance to set boundaries, restore balance, and start new traditions that would carry us forward, not as a spectacle, but as a quiet promise. The following week, I met Mom and Dad at a local credit union, its office warm with the scent of fresh paper and coffee. Mr. Grayson, my attorney, had helped draft the repayment and protection trust I'd proposed before the trial, and now it was ready to sign. The trust would secure their savings $30,000 from my investments to cover their immediate medical needs with a plan for Emily to contribute over time. Mom's hands trembled as she signed, her eyes soft with gratitude, while Dad's signature was firm, a silent acknowledgement of their mistake. I didn't ask for their apology again. Their courthouse kneeling was enough. Instead, I focused on the trust's purpose, protecting their future, ensuring Mom's arthritis injections and Dad's prescriptions were covered without fear. I added the signed agreement to my binder's resolution tab, its pages now a record of not just evidence, but renewal. As we left, Dad squeezed my shoulder, a gesture small but heavy with meaning. "We're trying, Laura," he said. I nodded, knowing trust would rebuild slowly, like balancing a ledger one entry at a time. Emily's part in the trust was non-negotiable, and by mid-January, she'd enrolled in a financial literacy course at the community center, a condition I'd set to break her cycle of reckless choices. I drove her to her first class, the car ride silent but not hostile. Her gaze fixed out the window. She'd also started community service, assisting with bookkeeping at the senior center under my guidance. We sat together one afternoon, the center's fluorescent lights buzzing as I showed her how to log donations and track expenses. Her hands fumbled with the spreadsheets, but she listened, her usual defiance softened by the court's ruling. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she mumbled, once her voice low. I didn't respond, just pointed to the next column. Helping her wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but a step toward accountability. I noted her progress in my binder, a new page under terms tracking her classes and service hours. Emily wasn't the sister I'd lost, but she was starting to be someone who could earn her place back. The church community, once cold with whispers, began to thaw. At the next Sunday service, Pastor Ellis made an announcement from the pulpit, his voice steady but warm. "The Mitchell family has faced a trial," he said, "but they've chosen truth and next steps together. Let's support them with prayer, not judgment." There was no drama, no spotlight, just a call for humility that echoed my hope for healing. Mrs. Ellis caught my eye after her smile, genuine, and the quilting circle invited me back that week, their hugs warmer than before. I didn't need their applause. The quiet return to my pew, to shared coffee and laughter, was enough. I added a note to my motive tab: "Church supports truth, no spectacle." The community's shift wasn't just acceptance, it was a mirror of the balance I'd fought for, a reminder that my name, Mitchell, still carried weight. To mark this new chapter, I started a small tradition at Christmas gathering Mom, Dad, and Emily at their house. The living room glowed with string lights, the air rich with pine and cinnamon. I handed each a $5 bill and nod to the modest wins that matter. "Buy an ornament." I said something that means family to you. Mom chose a tiny glass angel, Dad, a wooden star. Emily, a simple snowflake. We hung them on the tree, their choices small but honest, a contrast to the lies that had nearly broken us. I kept my ornament, a silver bell, to remind me of clarity of truth ringing clear. The tradition wasn't grand, but it was ours, a symbol of rebuilding on trust, not tears. I photographed the tree, adding the picture to my binder's resolution tab, a quiet record of our first step forward. As I drove home that night, the Ohio snow falling softly, I felt a calm settle over me. The trust was signed. Emily was learning the church had spoken, and our tree held new meaning. Some in town whispered revenge when they heard about the trial, but I didn't see it that way. Revenge tears down. I'd built balance, setting boundaries that protected Mom and Dad while giving Emily a path to change. My binder, once a weapon, was now a story of restoration. But as I parked, a faint unease stirred. Lifelike numbers always had another column to balance. They called it revenge. I call it balance. And the next knock might be a story I never saw coming. The judge's words, "You owe this court and your daughter the truth," hung heavy as the courtroom emptied the weight of Emily's confession, and my parents' stunned silence settling over us. I'm Laura Mitchell, a 42-year-old bookkeeper who'd fought for truth with evidence, not anger, and though the dismissal of the case against me was a victory, I felt no triumph. My binder had exposed Emily's lies, but the real work was ahead, holding her accountable while mending our family with compassion. As I stepped into the courthouse corridor, I braced for what came next, determined to set boundaries that would heal, not harm, those I loved. The corridor smelled of wax and old wood, its marble walls echoing with footsteps. Mom and Dad stood near the exit, their faces pale, Emily lingering behind them, her eyes red from crying. Before I could speak, Mom stepped forward, her hands trembling, and sank to her knees, Dad following his knees, creaking as he lowered himself. Laura, we were wrong, Mom whispered, her voice breaking. We believed her, and we hurt you. Dad's head bowed, his voice gruff. We should have trusted you. The sight of them kneeling vulnerable in that public space tore at me. Relatives, Uncle Ray. Cousin Lisa stood nearby, their silence a quiet support. I knelt too, touching Mom's shoulder. I forgive you, I said softly, meaning it, but knowing forgiveness needed structure to last. I stood my resolve firm, ready to lay out terms that would protect them and hold Emily to account. Back at my apartment that evening, I drafted a letter outlining my conditions, my desk lamp casting a warm glow over my binder. First, Emily had to write a formal apology to Mom, Dad, and me, acknowledging her theft and lies, a step toward owning her actions. Second, she'd enroll in a financial literacy course at the community center, starting next month to learn responsibility, not manipulation. Third, she'd perform community service bookkeeping at the senior center, where I'd oversee her work to ensure she followed through. Finally, I'd establish a trustee-managed trust funded by my own savings to replenish Mom and Dad's $50,000 with Emily contributing over time. The trust would be handled by a neutral credit union, ensuring their medical bills and retirement were secure. I typed each term with care, balancing justice with mercy, and added a copy to my binder's resolution tab. I wasn't seeking a payout, never had been. This was about their safety, our family's healing, a future where trust could grow again. The next day, I met Mom, Dad, and Emily at their house, the air thick with the scent of pine from their lingering Christmas decorations. I handed them the letter, my voice steady. These terms protect you and give Emily a path forward, I said. Mom read it silently, her eyes tearing up while Dad nodded, his jaw tight but accepting. Emily, sitting across the table, looked down, her hands fidgeting. I'll do it, she said, her voice small but clear. I didn't smile, didn't gloat. This wasn't victory. It was accountability. I'd declined any personal compensation in court, despite the judge's offer to consider damages. My focus was on Mom's arthritis care, Dad's prescriptions, their dignity. I wanted them whole, not me enriched. I added their agreement to my binder, a note. Under terms, family accepts, January 10th. The following Sunday, I stood outside First Grace Church, the winter sun glinting off the stained glass. The congregation's warmth had started to return, but I felt the weight of what I'd lost and gained. Inside, I shared a pew with Mom and Dad, their presence a quiet step toward repair. Emily sat a row back, her head bowed, already scheduled for her first class. After the service, I spoke to Mrs. Ellis, thanking her for the photo that had turned the tide. You did right by the truth, she set, her hand on mine. I nodded, thinking of my binder now, a record of not just evidence but redemption. To everyone watching this story unfold, I hope it resonates, whether it's the sting of betrayal, the fight for truth, or the hope of healing. What do you think? Would you have offered Emily a chance to make amends, or pushed for harsher consequences? Drop your thoughts in the comments I'm reading. Everyone, and your perspective keeps this story alive. If you're moved by this journey, hit that subscribe button and join our community. We're telling stories of real people, real fights, and real redemption, and I'd love for you to be part of it. Let's keep the conversation going. Share your take below. As I stood outside the church, Mom touched my arm, her voice soft. "Can you come home Sunday?" she asked. I looked at the church doors, the place where I'd rebuilt my name, and thought about what home could mean now. "Can you come home Sunday?" Mom asks. I look at the church doors and think,